On this edition of FedGov Today, the VA and the Army amp up their modernization collaboration.
I've got a great relationship with the leadership at Arlington National Cemetery, and we are literally working together right now. Imagine this, to utilize the same system.
VA Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs Sam Brown on FedGov Today in just a moment. Uniting program strategy, advanced technology, process, and execution for a more efficient government. That's Maximus. Every program, every service, every time. That's innovation forward. Learn more at maximus.com/federal. The National Cemetery Administration is reviewing results from a customer satisfaction survey it takes every 3 years. That survey shows NCA earning its highest rating ever. Captain Sam Brown, U.S. Army retired, is Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Sir, thanks for joining me today. It's great to talk to you. VA has been focused on customer experience and veteran experience for many years now. Why is it especially a priority for you and your team at NCA? Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Francis. It's good to be here. And, just to get to that question about customer experience, it really ties back to our mission. NCA is a special place to work with a very special mission where we ensure that veterans and their eligible family members receive the memorialization and the care and into eternity at our national cemeteries. And we have one chance to get that right as families are entrusting their loved ones into our eternal care. And so it's something that we take very seriously. We're also a workforce that is greater than 60% veterans ourselves. And so this is very personal as part of the brotherhood and the sisterhood of, fellow members of the armed services. And there's just a lot of pride in what we do because we know that we are there for those family members. And one day someone will be there for us.
A number of agencies across the government, not just VA, follow best practices in customer experience to succeed in that area. How does the mission of NCA either add on to the best practices that you follow in order to serve veterans well in this part of their experience, or how do you have to deliver customer experience differently because of the nature of your mission?
I think there's a great sense of urgency for us, and I wouldn't be given the full truth if I didn't say that there's a lot of pressure on this team, and it's self-imposed pressure, but there is certainly pressure on us to make sure that we are on our game to deliver on this mission on a daily basis. And Memorial Day, which we just celebrated, is a prime example of it's a time where families are coming out to visit their loved ones' grave sites all across this country. 157 national cemeteries we have. We just had 120 services this past weekend, and our team knows that is such a significant day for the country, especially for the families who have loved ones who are eternally entrusted to us at our national cemeteries. And so there's a high burden and expectation of ourselves to make sure that our customers get the care and the love and the memorialization that they deserve. And this country owes it to them.
In preparation to talk to you, I was thinking right now a list of things I wanted to ask you. And one of the things that I thought about asking was, when do you start to prepare for Memorial Day? And I was reminded of a conversation I had with an NCA team member, this is probably 10 or 15 years ago, who said, we plan for Memorial Day every day of the year, and every day of the year is Memorial Day for us. And to somebody who doesn't do this, maybe that sounds corny, but I also imagine, given the mission of the organization, it's probably true, sir. Is that fair to say?
It's very fair to say. I mean, every day that we're doing services, or even the days that we're not doing services, for example, if there's not a service on a weekend, we put the care and the work in to make sure that when a family member shows up, even for their own private moment of remembrance, that is a Memorial Day for them. And so every day as we bury and inter, those service members from our country, it is a Memorial Day. We just know that on Memorial Day itself, there's just heightened attention to that. But we're also working, as one of our priorities is to just kind of increase awareness about the benefits that veterans have earned to be interred at our national cemeteries. We're also branching out into other days. This is the 250th birthday of our great country. So July 4th will be a big day for us as well, where we'll have ceremonies and services. But also, it's the 25th anniversary on this September 11th of our nation being attacked, and we will be holding a National Day of Service the following day on September 12th, just in honor of all of those who have served and those who fell on 9/11 and since then.
You mentioned one of your priorities, bringing awareness to benefits that veterans have earned, and we'll talk through that list of priorities in a moment. But you said at the American Legion Washington conference recently, it was shocking to me as I came into this role to learn that only 18% of veterans who are eligible choose to be interred in national cemeteries. And I imagine there are many different factors as to why people make those choices. But what do you think you are able to do to increase that number, or to make it, at least to make people aware that they have a choice that maybe they're not aware that they have now?
Francis, it's a great question, and you're right. Certainly there's very personal reasons that some family members and veterans themselves may choose not to be, buried in a national cemetery. But our fear is that someone would not know, and that's why we kind of get back to the awareness. We do everything we can to raise that awareness, and so we do outreach events, with many VSOs. We go to our local VA medical centers and have booths where we're informing veterans who are receiving their health care about the benefits that they've earned, and shockingly, many folks just don't understand, or they don't think that they are eligible themselves. And the reality is, we just need to do a better job of getting that message out there. One of the ways we're promoting this is by allowing people to sign up in what we call a pre-need eligibility determination. And so, like, I did this myself. I'm clearly a veteran. I get my health care through the VA. And so because I'm already sort of tied into the VA system, not as the undersecretary, but as a veteran, when I did my pre-need eligibility, it was such a seamless process because the VA already recognizes me as a veteran. I got an email back 4 hours later saying, "Yep, Sam, you're eligible." Now, here's why that matters. My family doesn't need to worry about that element in the logistics of determining whether I am eligible or not later. And for some family members who may not know where a loved one's DD-214 is, or not understand some of those kind of technical things behind service, it makes things easier for them, and what is for many just kind of the most crushing and sorrowful day of their life.
The eligibility and understanding awareness ties into the second of your priorities that you talked about, and that's access. You said we have a goal at NCA to provide access within 75 miles to 95% of eligible veterans. It sounds like you're almost there, 94.18%. You're cutting it pretty close there, sir.
It's we are close. We are close, and this is one of those things where NCA partners, frankly, with the states. This is not something that we're able to achieve purely on our own. We are 157 national cemeteries, but there's also over 120 state veteran cemeteries that help us kind of achieve that goal. And so for many of these, state, territorial, and tribal cemeteries that help us kind of close that gap to 95%, they've received, grant funding from us here at the National Cemetery Administration to either establish a cemetery, in some cases expand a cemetery, to ensure that we continue to have access across our nation. And it's something that we take very seriously, is trying to push that. But when you're so close to 95%, one of the things that we have to kind of weigh and measure is how many veterans could we potentially serve if we were to put a new cemetery in somewhere that's not currently being served. And so we're to this point where I think as public servants, we're always looking for how can we deliver better for the American people. And I think this is one of those things we're kind of looking at. Is there a new creative way for us to close that gap, or do we need to look at sort of a new metric? Because right now it's within 75 miles, and I want us to be open to new things.
You anticipated my next question, which is how do you make the determination of whether there's enough critical mass of people in a particular area? And it sounds horrible as it comes out of my mouth, because I know we don't want to just boil it down to numbers when we're talking about the mission of your organization. But at the same time, I imagine it isn't cost effective or appropriate necessarily to establish something where there aren't going to be there aren't enough people who are going to use the service.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a stewardship element of, we are funded, by the taxpayers, and the president puts forth a budget to Congress, and they appropriate, the resources that we need to work within. And so, there will be a gap where some veterans are not within sort of our goal. But we're going to keep pushing to serve better, and just excited for the way that the president and secretary and Congress, always support the National Cemetery Administration in this mission.
The third priority that you've spoken about recently sounds very similar to a priority that a lot of organizations across the federal government are dealing with, and that's modernization. You talked about how one of NCA's systems is my math is terrible. 30 years old, more than 30 years old, using MS-DOS. That's unfortunately not uncommon across government. How are you evaluating, especially given the resource situation that all agencies are working with, how do you evaluate which systems get modernized and how they then will be required to interact potentially the new systems with systems that are still legacy?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I know there's a lot of government agencies that are kind of wrestling with this. And ultimately, where we're going is we want to use common sense in our decision making. And we've all heard stories. Some of your audience here have had to deal with systems that are either very legacy systems, or maybe there's a sister agency somewhere that has a different system, but it could have been the same. And so what we're doing is we're looking to modernize the system that allows us to kind of track our scheduling, track all of our burial plots, and is the core backbone of the NCA technology sort of universe. We actually looked to our friends at Department of Army and Arlington National Cemetery, because they have recently updated their system. And I think this is something that more people want to see, is collaboration between government agencies. And so I've got a great relationship with the leadership at Arlington National Cemetery, and we are literally working together right now. Imagine this, to utilize the same system. And so our Department of IT and the armies over there are collaborating on this. I think this is a win. I think this is a model that a lot of other agencies could find a lot of success in. And honestly, it's going to save us so much money. And we won't, at the end of this, even have to worry about how do we tie an old system into a newer system. We're going to be on a new modern system that allows us to scale for decades to come.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining me, and thank you for the chance to learn about the work that you and your team are doing. I appreciate your time today.
Francis, I really appreciate it. If I could plug one more thing, look, I know there's a lot of veterans in the government workforce out there. It's just an invitation to please make sure that you pursue, your own eligibility, and you've earned a right to be interred at a national cemetery. And the other thing is we have what we call the Veteran Legacy Memorial. It's in fact, folks can find that at va.gov/remember, and think of it as sort of a digitization of all. We have over 10 million veterans digitally memorialized on that website. And in fact, you can even go in advance. Once you've been deemed pre-need eligible, you can go begin to populate your own page that will be published one day in the future. And so I've even begun doing that, and leave little Easter eggs out there for my family one day, and photos and documents that I can upload now. And you can also do it for your loved ones. As we celebrate America's 250, we even have a page for a Revolutionary War veteran out there, and so this is something that I would just love for the government workforce to get engaged on. And it's taking care of your family, but it's also honoring their service.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Francis.
You can find links to everything Under Secretary Brown discussed on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming Thursday. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening.